Hello everyone. In the previous class, we saw the theory of guna. In this class, we will familiarize ourselves with the concept of riti or style. These two concepts, the concept of guna and riti, are interrelated. How are these concepts related to each other? Well, we will see that soon. The Sanskrit word riti literally means style. So the concept of riti is the style in which a poet is going to compose his poetic composition. Sanskrit literary theoreticians believed that not all the styles suit the subject matter at hand, and it is necessary that the poets choose or invent a style that helps their engagement with the topic they are dealing with. In Sanskrit poetics, the idea of riti is very much related to the concept of guna. Often, the ontology of riti or style is determined by the presence of certain gunas. Since riti cannot be evaluated separately from the idea of guna, these two concepts are discussed in this class in conjunction with each other. In the history of Sanskrit literary theory, the first person to systematically talk about the question of riti was the 9th century critic Vamana. Vamana was of the view that riti or style is the very soul of kavya. In his Kavya Alankara Sutravritti, Vamana says, Kavyasyatma riti, which means riti is the very soul of kavya. According to him, a riti where all the gunas are properly knit together serves as the very soul of kavya. He thought of riti as Vishishta Pada Rachana riti or special arrangement of words. Vamana's observation in this respect is worth quoting here. Vamana observes, the speciality of style is to be defined by its quality or guna. According to Vamana, there are three kinds of ritis, namely Vaidarphi, Gaudiya and Panjali. Vamana says that these styles are named after these places primarily because these varieties are mainly employed by writers from these locations. According to Vamana, out of these three styles or ritis, the most appropriate diction to compose poetry is Vaidarphi riti, because Vaidarphi contains all the 20 gunas. He praises Vaidarphi by saying that it is as sonorous as the sound of the musical instrument veena. He calls Vaidarphi Vipanchi Swara Saubhagya. While Vaidarphi is blessed with the presence of all the 20 gunas, 10 Artha gunas and 10 Shabda gunas, the riti called Gaudi is characterized by the presence of only two qualities, namely Ojas and Prasada. Panjali riti also has only two gunas, viz. Madhurya and Saukumarya. In Kavya Alankara Sutravritti, Vamana warns the aspiring poets against practicing the art of composing poems in any style or riti other than that of Vaidarphi. Vamana says that he explained the ontology of Gaudiya and Panjali not to suggest that these styles are also suitable to compose kavya. He does it only to distinguish Vaidarphi from the rest of the ritis. Vamana believed that just as a painting evolves from initial lines on the canvas, so also a poem develops from one of the three ritis. Vaidarphi was the most preferred style for Vamana because it had all the merits, and he believed that only this style was capable enough to express the inexpressible truth of poetry. S.K. De's observation about Vamana's conception of riti and guna merits attention here. They explains that Vaidarphi is the complete or ideal one which unifies all the poetic excellences, whereas the other two encourage extremes. The one lays stress on the grand, the glorious, or the imposing, the other on softness and sweetness, whereby the former loses itself often in bombast, the latter in prolixity. They is of the view that these styles, which derive their names from regions, could have been developed from an empirical analysis of the prevailing peculiarities of poetic expression in different places, and furnishes another proof of the general, a posteriori character of the discipline itself. Vamana's idea that Rīti is the soul of poetry was later refuted by Ananda Vardhana. According to Ananda, it was persons unable to analyze the true nature of poetry who propounded the doctrine of styles. Ananda continues to observe the Vaidarbhi, Gaudi, and Panchali styles were set up by persons unable to give a clear idea of the true nature of poetry. For this true nature, which we have analyzed by using the concept of dhvani, appeared to them unclearly. His argument was that Rīti dealt only with the syntactics of poesy and did not really analyze the true nature of literary creation. Moreover, the choice of style was dependent on the rasa to be conveyed. According to Ananda, it is also wrong to claim that one particular style is the most appropriate style to compose the poetic composition. According to him, the poets should change their styles according to the subject matter at hand. Ananda Vardhana was also against the view that a good poetic composition should contain all the gunas, because according to him, guna has to be modified according to the rasa that's being portrayed. For example, Sringara rasa has the quality of sweetness or madhurya predominant in it, whereas Raudra has the quality of ojas. So, the styles should be changed according to the rasa that the poet wanted to convey. Here, I would also like to point out that Ananda Vardhana used the term samkhadana to refer to what Vamana called riti. So far, we have been dealing with the concept of riti in connection with its major proponent Vamana and Vamana's detractor Ananda. Now, let's take a look at the history of riti briefly. If you are interested in knowing this concept in detail, you can refer to my own book, An Introduction to Indian Aesthetics, History, Theory and Theoreticians. Okay, let's now come back to the major point we have been discussing. The origins of the idea of riti can be traced back to Bharata. Bharata does not use the term riti. Instead, he uses the term vritti. In his Natya Shastra, Bharata lists 4 vrittis, namely Kaishiki, Satvadi, Arabhadi and Bharati. Of these, only Bharati had anything to do with language, while the others were concerned or connected to various aspects of performance. Bharata had also mentioned a category called pravritti. According to Bharata, pravrittis are based on the regional variations of language, behavior and cultural practices. The pravrittis mentioned by Bharata include Avanti, Dakshinatya, Panchali and Ugramakhati. These respectively represent the styles of the West, South, East and North of India. Bharata insisted that the characters should speak a language that suited the region and culture they came from. So, we can undoubtedly say that the idea of riti was an evolution from Bharata's concept of vritti and pravritti. Bhamaha, Dandin and Kuntaka had also incorporated the idea of riti in their theoretical corpus. But instead of riti, they used the term marga. Bhamaha, the founding father of Sanskrit poetics, did not think much of marga or riti. For him, the most important factor was the way language was being used, irrespective of the style. Although he referred to Vaidarphi and Gaudi in Kavyalankara, he rejected outright the very classification of riti propounded by his predecessors. He also did not subscribe to the idea that Vaidarphi was superior and Gaudi was inferior. According to Bhamaha, there was hardly any difference between Vaidarphi and Gaudi. He opined that this nomenclature is due to unintelligent people following blindly the lead of others. He observed that even Gaudiya is superior if it has alankaras or figures of speech in it, and if it is devoid of vulgarity and has full and proper meanings and is simple. There is no separate thing as Vaidarphi. In Kavya Darsha, although Dandin mentions margas such as Panjali, Avantika, Latiya, and Magathi, he paid attention only to two margas, namely Vaidarphi and Gaudi, citing the reason that only these two are discernible. Dandin considered these gunas as qualities that are to be necessarily present in a kavya, and he connected them to margas. According to Dandin, all the 10 gunas can be perceived only in Vaidarphi marga, while Gaudi contains some of them. He also believed that even Gaudi and Vaidarphi, despite being clearly distinguishable, vary from writer to writer. In other words, innumerable variants of Gaudi and Vaidarphi styles can be found. Dandin also points out that even Saraswati, the goddess of speech, is incapable of counting the margas existing in this world. It is worth noting that Dandin's approach takes cognizance of the fact that a lot of subjectivity goes into the choice of style and diction, which was a departure from the norm. Utpada, the successor of Dandin, borrowed the idea of riti from Bharata and developed the idea of a style that depended on diction, a style that had harsh sounding words that were difficult to pronounce was called Parusha. Words that were soft and pleasing constituted Komala, and a middle path was termed Upanagarika. So, we need to keep in our mind a few things before we wrap up our class on Riti. The first aspect is that the style or Riti is often defined on the basis of the presence of certain gunas. So, there is a very strong connection between the idea of guna and Riti. Vamana was the first literary theoretician to talk systematically about the idea of Riti. According to Vamana, Riti is the very soul of Kavya. Among the three Ritis that he mentions, namely Vaidarphi, Gaudi and Panjali, the most important Riti is Vaidarphi because it contains all the gunas in it. Although Vamana mentions three gunas, he reminds us that these Ritis are mentioned not because they are suitable for the poetic composition, but because he wanted to distinguish Vaidarphi from other Ritis. Finally, the view of Vamana was refuted by Ananda Vardhana. Ananda Vardhana said that Riti was not the soul of literature or Kavya. What functioned as the soul of literature for Ananda Vardhana was Dhvani. He also refuted the idea that the presence of all the 10 gunas is necessary for a poetic composition to appear charming. These are the major points that you need to keep in your mind when you think about the idea of Riti. Thank you.